Greetings, fiends. It's your old pal Horror Mike, here to present a condensed version of the 1970s sci-fi horror and exploitation films Part 2 show that I presented in its entirety on Friday night. For people that watched the show Friday night, you may recall that we were jokingly talking about The Vampire Lovers, which is one of the films that I covered on Friday night, and I showed a trailer. It was a trailer that was from the Scream Factory, which are selling the Blu-ray to The Vampire Lovers, the 1970 film. So, it's a trailer. It's an advertisement, which could theoretically sell them more Blu-rays, right? Well, turns out they really don't give a crap. Because a few hours after the show, I received a copyright notice. Oh, yes. Got a copyright notice from YouTube. And it was indeed Scream Factory that placed the copyright notice on the Vampire Lovers trailer. And so it demonetized the entire video. So I said, screw that. I quickly edited out the Vampire Lovers trailer. So today, in the condensed version, when you're watching the film, I'm not going to have video of the Vampire Lovers. What I'm going to do is you will see images and perhaps a couple of very short clips, like I'm talking 10 to 15-second clips maximum from the Vampire Lovers. And in other news, next Friday night, August 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Horror Mike Show presents 1970s extreme horror. Yes, folks, all of those 1970s films that were controversial, that were banned in many countries, we're going to be covering those next Friday night. Now, this should be quite interesting, to say the least. I am sure that I'm just going to put an 18 and over only rating on the show to begin with. And also, it is the second installment of the Sci-Fi Horror Book of the Month Club here on the Horror Mike Show. And this month, we are covering the classic sci-fi horror novella from John W. Campbell, written in the 1930s, called Who Goes There, which was later expanded with some found missing manuscript, 45 pages to be exact, and published in 2019 as Frozen Hell, which was the original title of the novella. So we're going to be looking at that novella from John W. Campbell and comparing it to the 3 films that have been made based upon that novella. The Thing from Another World, the 1950s Howard Hawks produced film, the 1982 film by John Carpenter called The Thing, and then the 2011 prequel also called The Thing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to see you all there Friday night. And in honor of the 1970s Extreme Horror Movie Show on Friday night, I'll be giving away 3 collectible items from the 1970s, which are completely in line with 1970s extreme horror. They're all the same item. I've got 3 of them, and I will be more or less randomly giving them away on Friday night. It's going to be a really fun show. Hope to see you there. Now, on with the condensed version of Friday night's 1970 sci-fi horror and exploitation films Part 2. Enjoy.
The following feature has been rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America.
Satan's claw was like a horrible disease, highly contagious and deadly dangerous.
Hail, Behemoth, spirit of the dark, take thou my blood, my flesh, my skin, and walk. Holy Behemoth, father of my life, speak now, come now, rise now from the forest, from the
You can't trust your mother. Your best friend. The neighbor next door. 1 minute, they're perfectly normal. The next, rabid.
A new terror fills the screen with horror. Where are these women going dressed in mourning? Leading a young girl to sacrifice. Mystery surrounds the horsemen from the ancient past.
It is said they died 6 centuries ago. I'm being given up to them so others may be saved. Hurry, you must get away, sir.
I won't leave you here.
Evil always has a way of breaking free.
Tommy's gone. It's hard to believe. It was a good idea not to let your little brother come to the funeral.
Yeah, I don't like this place.
Something weird is going on up there.
You play a good game, boy. But the game is finished.
For 2 million years in these subterranean caves, a creature of superhuman evil was entombed in a wall of ice. Travel with us on a journey into a world where nightmare becomes reality.
Are you telling me that an ape that lived 2 million years ago got onto that crate, killed the baggage man and put him in there?
Yes, I am. It's alive. It must be.
Get ready for Starlight Slaughter.
Hello?
Created by Toby Hooper, the maker of last year's screen sensation, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What happens to these people in Starlight Slaughter will give you the most chilling, terrifying 90 minutes you ever spent in a theater.
Those damned arachnids, folks. They're everywhere. I'm telling you, insects, arachnids, they're all over the place. Of course, it is summer, and you know how that goes, especially in the South. They just come out and they want human flesh. Next week, as I've been talking about for the last several weeks, we're going to be talking about John W. Campbell's Frozen Hell, aka Who Goes There, which was adapted into, well, basically 3 films. The Thing from Another World, produced by Howard Hawks in the 1950s. John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. And of course, the prequel, which came out in 2011, also called The Thing. This is the novella that they found 45 more pages of manuscript that was long lost. Found it just several years ago. So Frozen Hell was born. This is a relatively new book. I think it's from 2019. There is also Who Goes There. Now, if you go on YouTube, you can listen to the audio version, narrated version of Who Goes There. So you don't need to really necessarily buy the book. But we're going to talk about the book, Who Goes There or Frozen Hell, and how that compares, for example, to John Carpenter's The Thing, Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World from the 1950s, and of course the 2011 prequel to The Thing called, strangely enough, The Thing. So all three of those films, we're going to see what did they leave out, what did they leave in. Now, if you've read either novella, Who Goes There or Frozen Hell, you know what I'm talking about. Some very surprising stuff. Now, keep in mind, folks, this was originally written in the 1930s, right? This is a few decades before Howard Hawks would produce the first adaptation, right, of Who Goes There, The Thing from Another World. Then you move on to 1982, and we're talking, God, 45 plus years, around 45 years later, John Carpenter reels it back in. He takes Who Goes There, right? And he makes a more accurate adaptation of John W. Campbell's novella. And we're going to be looking at the differences and talking about those. So it should be really quite cool for next week. And part three of the 1970s series, which is extreme 1970s horror. Get ready, okay? Take some Xanax, because that might help you for the extreme nature of our program next week. I just thought I'd show you some more in my physical media collection as far as 70s films go. This for me was a must. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Bob Clark, who also made Black Christmas, the original Black Christmas, and A Christmas Story with Darren McGavin. The same guy. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. This is the 30th anniversary exhumed edition, folks. If you haven't seen Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, you got to check it out, man. It is just fantastic. So there you go. Great, just great low budget zombie flick, you know. Another one we're definitely going to be covering, Dark Star, John Carpenter's, first feature film. And of course, Dan O'Bannon is in it as Pinback. You gotta, if you like sci-fi comedies, this is way up there on the spectrum. I think you have to admit that. And it is the Hyperdrive edition, this particular one, as it says, packed with 3 hours of bonus features on 2 DVDs. Yeah, that's right, folks. It's Dark Star. And we're going to be covering this as well. Needless to say, and you've seen this, you saw this with the initial episode, some video from Flesh Gordon. And absolutely one of my favorite comedies of all time, Flesh Gordon, because it's so damn good. The animation, the effects, everything, and the fact that it's, got some of these people that are normally porn stars that are in this film. The mix is just something else. I think it's one of the greatest takeoffs of anything ever made. It's just fantastic. The stop motion animation is brilliant. Flesh Gordon. It's not on Tubi. I don't know if it's ever been on Tubi. Another great one. I think this is on Tubi. I'm going to have to check. A Boy and His Dog. Of course. I love that cover. It's a rather unusual cover. It's not the typical one that you see. Happy face in the mushroom cloud. Oh, yes. Love this movie. Remember seeing this movie, God, at least a few times, at the drive-in, at least once back in the 70s, Fantastic. Harlan Ellison, L.Q. Jones directed, and One of the very few films that Ellison, or adaptations of Ellison's works, that he actually liked, with a couple of exceptions, of course. Back to the Doller. Don Doller, folks. The Alien Factor. Oh, yeah. Late 1970s, Don Doller's kicking ass with The Alien Factor. I just love that cover. And this one is on Tubi, folks. If you want to check out some low budget mayhem from Don Doller, check out The Alien Factor. This one is last, but definitely not least. And I'm showing you this now for a great reason, because this will be one of the extreme horror films being covered next week. This is Lucio Fulci's Zombie from 1979. As it says on the back, which is hilarious. I love this write-up. This is from Chaz Balin from Gore Zone. As gory as the law allows, Zombie set new standards for eyeball violence, arterial spurting, maggot infestations, topless skin diving, and zombie table manners. Zombie, Lucio Fulci. Guess what, folks? It just came on Tubi. It is brand new on the Tubi, so you can watch it if you'd like, because we're going to be talking about this movie. It's one of the extremes, okay, in horror films from the 1970s. We're going to start off with Attack of the Insects and Arachnids. As you can see, we got Kingdom of the Spiders, Giant Spider Invasion, and Empire of the Ants. I just thought I'd throw them together. These are the only freaking insect movies tonight. Kingdom of the Spiders, of course, 1977, and indeed, this film stars William Shatner. Two animal experts learn that thousands of tarantulas have changed their eating habits, putting their town at the center of an 8-legged nightmare. And you know, the funniest damn thing about this is that when you look at the starring lineup, you may notice somebody is missing from the lineup, and that's William Shatner, who's the freaking star of the freaking movie. I don't particularly recommend it. It's got some unintentional humor going on in the film, and it's just kind of plotting kind of film. That's all I'm saying. It's just not really that engaging. Now, Giant Spider Invasion is pretty much the same. 1975, but it's got giant spiders, folks. Big ass spiders that eat people. Okay, now that's a lot better. When a black hole in space opens, two NASA scientists must find a way to stop gigantic flesh-eating spiders from eating their way through Wisconsin. And needless to say, folks, that's a lot of cheese. I'm sure I saw this one as well at the drive-in. There ain't no doubt about that. Check this out. I've got a trailer to the Giant Spider Invasion.
In a small Wisconsin town, something was about to happen that would send shockwaves around the world. Came from another world to destroy the Earth. It was the Giant Spider Invasion.
There you go. That's the Giant Spider Invasion. And Empire of the Ants is actually a step above. No doubt about that, from 1977. Of course, this is based upon the H.G. Wells story. And I think it may be the only adaptation of Empire of the Ants. An aggressive land developer takes prospective buyers to a reclaimed swamp in the southeast, where they are attacked by huge genetically mutated ants. We got to get to the vampire lovers. I couldn't hold off a second longer. Ingrid Pitt is calling me. 1970, folks, believe it or not, the vampire lovers. Let's check this out. 18th century Europe. A peaceful hamlet is ravaged by a seductive female vampire who has a thirst for blood of young women. Ingrid Pitt. Peter Cushing also in the film, directed by Roy Ward Baker. They've got some really hot-looking vampire babes, including Ingrid Pitt, of course, and highly recommended. It is on Tubi, and I happen to have a little trailer for the film. Eaten Alive, 1976. I remember seeing this at the drive-in. This is Tobe Hooper, a few years after Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The short-fused owner of a dilapidated hotel in East Texas goes on a killing spree and uses his victims' bodies as chum for his pet crocodile. Oh yeah, check out the cast, okay? You got Neville Brand, Mel Ferrer, Carolyn Jones, Marilyn Burns, returning from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Stuart Whitman, and Robert Englund is also in this film. He's got to be like 20 years old. I swear to God, you'll see him in the trailer.
If you were one of the millions of moviegoers who were electrified by the unbearable suspense and sheer terror of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, get ready for Starlight Slaughter.
Hello?
Created by Tobe Hooper, the maker of last year's screen sensation, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, no.
Marty Rustam presents Starlight Slaughter. Into this house of horror comes a handful of unsuspecting innocents. None of them will ever leave here alive.
Are you going back?
What happens to these people in Starlight Slaughter will give you the most chilling, terrifying 90 minutes you ever spent in the theater.
Starlight Slaughter, folks, aka Eaten Alive. They needed a few $100 more for that damn alligator. And it would have been much better. It's definitely worth seeing at least once or twice. Next up, one of my favorite sci-fi horror films of all time, Horror Express from 1972. It's got such a great story. There's something about this movie that I think it's just the fact that they're trapped on a train on the Trans-Siberian Express. As it says, an anthropologist transports the remains of a prehistoric ape aboard the Trans-Siberian Express, unaware that the ape harbors a dangerous secret. Yes, it's a real dangerous secret that could destroy mankind. So you got all these people trapped aboard a train, you know, the Trans-Siberian Express. You got fucking dead of winter. Nobody's going anywhere. They're stuck inside with this creature that is not of this world. It's just a fantastic film, and I do have a trailer for it.
For 2 million years in these subterranean caves, a creature of superhuman evil was entombed in a wall of ice, waiting to be free, waiting to live again. Travel with us on a journey into a world where nightmare becomes reality.
Are you telling me that an ape that lived 2 million years ago got onto that crate, killed the baggage man and put him in there.
Yes, I am. It's alive. It must be.
Travel with us, if you dare, on the Horror Express.
We'll search the train and find it, whatever it is, and destroy it.
But if it's alive...
I want this kept quiet. I don't want to panic the passengers.
The malignant power of this creature is indestructible, transferring its force from mind to mind, from body to body.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
You think evil can be killed with bullets? Satan lives.
The animal that you shot was only the host. It's alive in someone on this train.
You saw his eyes. One look at them and you're dead.
Anything that moves near that door, kill it!
Run. Run for your life. Hide, but you can't escape. No one can stop the fury and the terror of the Horror Express.
If you haven't seen it, check it out, man. It's on Tubi. It's on YouTube. It's just a great sci-fi horror film. Black Christmas, once again, it says horror holiday. It's one of my favorite holiday films. But I don't want to like it. I don't think that it deserves being pegged as just a holiday horror film. It's much better, much more than that. It is a great freaking horror movie. By any metric, Black Christmas, good God. It's Bob Clark once again, folks. Children shouldn't play with dead things, Bob Clark. Okay, and of course, he famously made A Christmas Story with Darren McGavin. You know, that lighthearted comedy drama. Darren McGavin, that's the same guy. That's Bob Clark. Okay, check out the cast. Olivia Hussey, Cara Delevingne, Margot Kidder, John Saxon, Andrea Martin from SCTV is also in this film. Sorority sisters are as good as dead when they're stalked by a psychopathic stranger over the Christmas holiday. In this influential slasher, you're not just whistling Dixie on that influential slasher film. This is like, you know, it's one of the original. And it's not even, I would hesitate even calling it a slasher film. You know, I wouldn't degrade it that much. In my opinion, it's just a great horror film. I highly recommend Rabid. I love early Cronenberg. I don't know about you guys. This is fairly early Cronenberg from 1977. They've got a few Cronenberg films on Tubi now. I noticed they had Dead Ringers, and Shivers is also on Tubi. So they've got at least 3 Cronenberg films on Tubi. An experimental surgery leaves an injured motorcyclist with a thirst for human blood, spreading a disease that turns people into ravenous monsters. Starring, of course, our favorite porn star, Marilyn Chambers, in the starring role. Directed by David Cronenberg, good Lord. And you could call it sci-fi horror. It's got those elements, definitely. And I do have a little trailer for you.
All around her, people are dying, and only Rose knows why.
You gotta come quick. You gotta come quick and get me.
It's Rose. It's gotta be. Something's happened to Rose.
Health officials have said they consider the outbreak of the new strain of rabies as being potentially the worst of this century.
Don't scream. Don't panic. He's dead, and the dead can't hurt the living. Rabid.
The Prime Minister was reluctant to officially declare a state of emergency, but as any citizen in the streets can tell you, martial law has come to Montreal.
Over that way, please. Get that car. I'm sorry, sir. You can't go right through. I'm sorry, sir. You don't have a car. Down, please.
Shooting down the victims is as good a way of handling them as we have got.
Stop! Stop or shoot!
You can't trust your mother. Your best friend. The neighbor next door. 1 minute, they're perfectly normal. The next, rabid.
Look, Marilyn Chambers is good in this film. I think she did a great job, you know, and it's early Cronenberg. It's very low budget. It's, you know, exploitation cinema, certainly. Next up, Phantasm Remastered, folks. This is the recent remastering to 4K. And it looks freaking great. 1979 sci-fi horror spectacular from Don Coscarelli. Remastered 1979 horror classic about two brothers who discover that their local cemetery is run by a ghoulish mortician wreaking havoc on the damned. Starring Michael Baldwin, Bill Thornberry, Reggie Bannister, Angus Scrimm, and Lynn Eastman. This trailer doesn't really do it justice, but it's still good. I think you'll enjoy it. Check it out.
Phantasm, the delusion of a disordered mind, a phantom, a spirit, a ghost. For nearly 4 decades, it has been contained, but evil always has a way of breaking free.
Tommy's gone. It's hard to believe. It was a good idea not to let your little brother come to the funeral. Yeah, I don't like this place. Something weird is going on up there.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
What's wrong with you?
There's something up there. I saw it.
You got some kind of an overactive imagination or something?
I know you're not gonna believe this, but these things were here.
Oh, give me a break. Okay, I believe you.
What we gotta do is lay that sucker out flat and drive a stake right through his goddamn heart.
You're gonna run that tall bastard straight down to hell.
You play a good game, boy. But the game is finished.
The Wizard of Gore came out in 1970. So it's got to be technically part of this list. And the way that I look at Herschel Gordon Lewis films is that, yeah, he was one of the first in the early 60s to have a lot of quote unquote gore in his films, but it's really bad gore. I don't know what else to say about it. It's not, I wouldn't call any of his films extreme for that reason. It's just that the effects just don't look that good. You know, he's trying to be shocking, and maybe in the early 60s it did shock people. A sinister magician plays hypnotic, bloody tricks on his unsuspecting audience members. Soon he's investigated by a local reporter. Next film you may have heard of under a different name. It's called Death Dream, but it's also called The Night Andy Came Home from 1974. And it's a variation, a takeoff on The Monkey's Paw. A grieving mother is granted a monkey's paw when she's told her son has died in Vietnam. She wishes it not to be true, and he returns home that night. It's a great film of the time, of the 70s. It's during the Vietnam War, or just after the Vietnam War. This also happens to be one of Tom Savini's first jobs, if I'm not mistaken, as far as special makeup effects goes. Once again, this is Bob Clark with Death Dream, or The Night Andy Came Home. Next up, 1971, folks. It's one that we've talked about before, but now we're finally going to delve into it a little bit. The Blood on Satan's Claw. Woo! From across the pond in England. Fantastic period piece horror film with a great cast. In the 17th century England, a judge is all that stands between a small village and a coven of devil worshippers, methodically converting its children. Patrick Wymark, Linda Hayden, Oli Toledo, Mary Andrews, Michelle Dautrice, directed by Piers Haggard.
Blood on Satan's Claw was like a horrible disease, highly contagious and deadly dangerous.
Hail, Behemoth, spirit of the dark, take thou my blood, my flesh, my skin, and walk. Holy Behemoth, father of my life, speak now, come now, rise now from the forest, from the
And still in 1971, with The House That Dripped Blood. Yes, indeed, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing together again in this anthology. Robert Bloch, the one and only, the author of Psycho, presents a quartet of terrifying tales with a great cast: Joanna Lumley, Chloe Franks, Denham Elliott, Joanna Dunham, and Tom Adams. Now, these next two films I paired together for a reason. The 1970 film, The Dunwich Horror, it's an adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft story, The Dunwich Horror. Night of the Seagulls, you have a couple, right? They move to the seaside, kind of remote seaside village. All the people are strange and they're not talkative and stuff, and they act kind of weird. In the medieval times, these knights lived, and they would find women in the village and sacrifice them to this weird frog deity. It's like this big statue. It looks like kind of a demon frog. That whole thing, the idea that they're sacrificing these women to this frog deity, is very much Shadow over Innsmouth type of thing. It's seaside town. You got weird people, townsfolk that don't like to talk to outsiders, and so it's got a Lovecraftian angle to it. It's got these knights, these dead people that have come back from the grave, and they continue, hundreds of years later, they continue to sacrifice women to this frog deity. So I'm going to play the trailer.
A new terror fills the screen with horror. The Night of the Seagulls. Where are these women going dressed in mourning? leading a young girl to sacrifice. Mystery surrounds the horseman from the ancient past. The Night of the Seagulls.
There you go, folks. That's, if you want to watch the entire trailer, it's on YouTube. It's inexplicably 5 minutes long. Pretty much shows like, the entire, it's like a condensed version of the entire freaking movie. I don't know why. But as you saw in the trailer, you see at the very beginning, there's like this weird looking frog deity, this statue. And that's what they're sacrificing the women to on this, the seaside town. It's kind of a slowly paced film. They've got these, knights that come back and they're all skeletons and they kind of move slowly. They're not much of a threat. And they discover at one point they can light them on fire. It's interesting, though. I mean, I did watch the entire film, which brings us to the actual Lovecraft adaptation, the 1970 film, The Dunwich Horror, starring Dean Stockwell. When a stranger arrives on campus, a graduate student falls under his spell. Her professor must save her from a mysterious and sinister ritual. Starring Sandra Dee, Dean Stockwell, Ed Begley, and this Sam Jaffe is also in this. I've read and reread The Dunwich Horror several times, at least in my life. This is the worst Lovecraft adaptation I've ever seen. It has nothing to do, very little to do with the story. In the first place, Dean Stockwell's character, Wilbur Whately, which is in the book, right? He's the main character. No, he's not wooing women, folks. He's like a freak. The guy is like ready to change into a interdimensional demonic animal. They just completely made it like, oh yes, well, we have to have this kind of vague love interest between Dean Stockwell and Sandra Dee. And that is just bullshit. There is no Sandra Dee character, okay, in the story. It's just a complete load of bollocks. I have heard that initially what I understood was that Richard Stanley was going to do an adaptation of the Dunwich Horror. Now, he did a recent adaptation of Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage, which is very good. It only deviates on a couple of points, and I think he could handle the Dunwich Horror.